We're going to call this meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Pursuant to NJSA 10:4, the Open Public Meetings Act, notice of this duly and regularly scheduled meeting, the Jackson Township Zoning Board of Adjustment, has been published and posted in all appropriate locations.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Hurley? Here. Mr. Stafford Smith? Here. Mr. Book? Here. Mr. Hudak? Here. Ms. Parnez? Here. Mr. Hyman?
Here.
Dr. Holfstein? Ms. Fritsch? Here. Ms. Bradley?
Here. Do we have any resolutions this evening?
No, we have no resolutions tonight.
And do we have any minutes this evening?
No, we do not.
Okay. We move on to payment of the vouchers. I have a voucher from the Township of Jackson for the recording secretary for tonight in the amount of $175. I need a motion and a second, please.
Move to approve.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Hurley?
Yes.
Mr. Stafford Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Book? Yes. Mr. Hudak? Yes. Ms. Parnez?
Yes.
Ms. Fritsch?
Yes.
Ms. Bradley?
Yes. Would you like to swear in the professionals, Mr. Murphy?
No? Okay. Thank you for raising your right hands. Gentlemen, do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony, information, questions, or comments that you're about to present before the board will represent the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
If you would each please state your names and positions with the board.
Evan Hill, Board Engineer.
Ernie Peters, Board Planner.
Jeffrey Paporo, Zoning Officer.
Thank you.
Mr. Murphy, do we have any announcements this evening?
Yes, we do. We have several announcements. Okay, so as it relates to this evening's calendar, application number 1, Dan Rack Excavating LLC, use variance 3458, block 21401, lot 52. That application has been withdrawn by the applicant, and a resolution of withdrawal will be drafted by myself for approval at the next meeting. Application number 2, Rosenblum, variance 3464, block 13301, lot 19. That application is being carried to the August 7th, 2024 meeting of the Jackson Township Zoning Board of Adjustment. No additional notice will be required. We also have announcements related to our next meeting. Our next meeting is scheduled for May 1st, 2024. That meeting is being canceled. The two applications that were listed on the May 1st agenda are being carried. The first application on the May 1st, 2024 agenda was Israel Birnbaum, use variance 3490, block 14001, lot 9. That application is being carried to the August 7th, 2024 meeting of the Jackson Township Zoning Board of Adjustment. No additional notice will be required, and the applicant has waived time. That's also, I should have mentioned that for Rosenblum, which was number 2 on this evening's agenda. That's being carried with no additional notice. The applicant also waived time. And then application number 2 on the May 1st, 2024 agenda is being carried, excuse me for just a minute while I find that. I believe it's being carried to the August 7th as well? No, application 2 on May 1st. Oh, strike that. That is being withdrawn. Okay. Apparently that has settled. That went before the planning board. That matter that was before the zoning board has settled. That application has been withdrawn. And a resolution of withdrawal will be prepared by myself for memorialization at the next meeting. So that concludes the announcements this evening. Again, there will be no May 1st, 2024 meeting of the Jackson Township Zoning Board of Adjustment. With regard to this evening's agenda, being that application 1 was withdrawn and application number 2 was carried, we only have left application 3, 4, and 5. Due to the nature of these applications, the chair of the board has determined that application 4 and 5 will go forward prior to application number 3. So the agenda is being switched around a bit. Application 3 will now be application 5. 4 and 5 will move up to 3 and 4. So that will conclude the announcements for this evening.
And no matters for discussion, correct?
That's correct.
Or administrative approvals. All right, so we are going to move to what is listed as application number 4. Applicant is Marcy Janura, variance 3491, block 1401, lot 11.
Madam Chair, members, professionals, my name is John Paul Doyle. I'm an attorney in this county for 55 years. So when I found out I was going to be made one, I figured it was just a concession to my age that I got to get home before dusk. I thank you. I represent the applicant in this matter. She is the owner of lot 11 in block 1401. It is a vacant 1-acre lot. Marcy has owned this lot since 1992. The lot was part of a 3-lot minor subdivision approved in 1987. At that time, it was fully conforming. No variances were sought. That was acknowledged in the resolution as a part of the R40 zone. However, we're here because 23 years after the zone was changed from an R40 to an R1 zone. The difference on this lot was that the width requirement of 100 feet in the old zone now became 150 feet. So that left her with a bit of a hardship. So we come here tonight taking note of the fact that the area has grown and developed somewhat, and most of the homes in the area seem to be on lots that are less than 150 feet. The applicant wants to build a conforming use, a single-family home, consistent with the master plan, consistent with the zoning ordinance, but for the width requirement. The single-family house that you'll see on the screen of about 2,400, 2,500 square foot will conform with the neighborhood. More than that, it will conform with the zoning ordinance. The coverage for impervious and for the structures are much less than what is authorized. The house would meet all of the setback requirements. So, while we did not think it was legally required, we even sent out buy-sell letters, as Mr. Peters mentioned, and got back responses that there was no interest in buying or selling. Thus, we have what I think is a classic hardship case, a hardship that can only be remedied and is acknowledged to exist and allowed to be remedied as a C variance. We think that we could prove both the C1 hardship and the C2 a better zoning alternative, but that's obviously going to be the job of Matt Wilder, who's handing out the documents as I speak. So I've gotten to the point where I'm going to say I'll now present Matt Wilder, a professional engineer, professional planner, to acknowledge hopefully that what I said was accurate and give you the legal and factual detail that would allow you to approve this application. Thank you very much.
Thank you for raising your right hand, Mr. Wilder. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony, information, questions, or comments that you're about to present before the board will represent the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? If you would please state your name, provide your affiliation and credentials.
He's obviously not a sound engineer. You want this one?
Again, Matthew Wilder, W-I-L-D-E-R. I'm a licensed professional engineer and planner in the state of New Jersey. I also happen to be a licensed professional engineer in New York and Pennsylvania. I have been before both the zoning and planning boards in Jackson on numerous occasions, as well as 60 municipalities on probably over 300 applications.
Mr. Wilder, this board accepts your credentials. Thank you.
Thank you. So Mr. Doyle testified to, or spoke to, much of what I'm going to testify. This is a pretty straightforward application and somewhat unique in the sense of how time has treated this property. So we are here for a variance to allow us to build a single-family home, and the variance that we're seeking is simply for lot width. All other bulk zoning standards, impervious coverage, building coverage, front, rear, side yard setbacks, all of that will be fully compliant. So this property was subject to a subdivision back in the late 1980s. At the time, the property was located within the R40 zoning district. The subdivision was approved and recorded in March of 1987 as a fully conforming subdivision. No variance relief was granted. Fast forward to 2024, and the property is now located in the R1 zone. This was based on the fact that the R1 zone was established in 2010, and while there were many similarities between the R40 zone and the R1 zone, one of the distinct differences between that zone is the lot width requirement in the R40 zone was 100 feet, and the R1 zone is 150 feet. So that creates the hardship in the sense that the property, when it was created, was fully conforming, and there is no adjacent, the properties on either side are owned by different individuals. There's no land available for purchase. So the property truly is a hardship condition where it is stuck with what it has. It's a lot condition that can't be improved upon. So before I delve into the standards for the hardship variance, I did just want to give a little bit of an overview of the plan as we've designed it. So the house that you see on the variance plan prepared by my office is about a 2,500 square foot house. It's very consistent with the area. It's a 2-car garage with a 2-car driveway, has a small deck in the back, a small covered porch in the front. In order to construct the home, we're proposing a disturbance of about 18,500 square feet. Only about 42% of the property is proposed to be disturbed to accommodate this. The remainder will remain wooded, and if at some point a homeowner wants to put a pool in, they would have adequate room to do so. From an improvement standpoint, there's not much for a single-family home to discuss. We have a driveway, we have a home, we have a deck in the back. But I did want to, just for the sake of having a complete record, review Mr. Hill's letter dated 4/15/24. And while we agree to make the changes as outlined within Mr. Hill's letter, I did just want to pull out a few comments. As it relates to comment number 2, we will, at the time of a plot plan, design a dry well for the home. Comment number 5 discusses curb and sidewalk. There are no curb or sidewalk on this side of Gomberg Avenue, so we would be asking for the waiver to install them, but would agree to contribute into the pedestrian safety fund. And then the last comment was number 8, which talked about soils testing to substantiate the design of the basement. We certainly will provide that at the time of plot plan. We also need to provide Board of Health approval, which will require soils testing for the septic system. So we take no issue with that comment, and we'll provide the requested testing. So as Mr. Doyle had mentioned, and myself as well, we are seeking this variance under the C1 or hardship variance criteria. So 40:5570C1 states where there is a unique or exceptional situation affecting a property, a variance can be granted. These conditions can vary. It could be an exceptional narrowness of a property, the shallowness or a shape of a property. It could also deal with an exceptional topographic condition. What you have here is a property which was subdivided more than 35 years ago and had existed up until 2010 as a conforming lot. When the R1 zone was created and this property was placed within that zone, what you created was a lot that no longer comported with the bulk zoning standards due to the lot width. This meets every definition of a hardship variance. Again, Mr. Doyle indicated we did buy-sell letters to the neighbors to see if they wanted to buy or sell all or a portion of their property or buy or sell all or a portion of our property. The answer was no. So denial of these variances would effectively render this property non-buildable, especially when you consider the fact that the design of the property is fully conforming. Again, no relief is being sought for any bulk variance conditions. So I believe this is as clear-cut a hardship variance as there is. I do have some information on some of the surrounding properties, if the board would like to see that. We have an exhibit we prepared that shows just how many of the adjacent properties are similarly zoned, or similarly sized, I should say. And while this doesn't necessarily speak to a C1 hardship variance, I think it is relevant just to realize and to look. When you look at the homes that were built in this part of town, many of them date back to the 70s and 80s. When the R40 zone was in place, it's not surprising that many of the homes have a 100-foot, or many of the lots have a 100-foot lot width. So I simply provide that for context, just so the board understands that what we're proposing or what exists is not out of character with the neighborhood, similar to the fact that the house is not out of character with the surrounding area. So again, just sort of for reference, as you can see, what this exhibit shows is it shows the zone boundary line between the R1 zone and the R20 zone. I'll focus my testimony on the R1 zone, as that is where the property is located. All of the yellow hatched properties are all properties that have homes built upon them that are deficient in lot width. The standard in this part of town is that the homes have less than 150 feet of lot width. And again, that is based on the age of the home, the age of the subdivisions, and the fact that the R40 zone permitted 100-foot in width. So again, I just provide that as sort of a point of reference, but I'd be happy to answer any questions at this time.
You're satisfied that based upon the terms of hardship as defined in 4055 DC1, we meet that?
Absolutely.
And even were we to look at C2, this is a better, more consistent zoning or a alternative?
That's correct. When you look at the C2 zoning proofs and you look at some of the goals and the purposes of planning, one of the goals is an appropriate population density. Well, the R1 requires single-family homes to be built on 1-acre lots. What we have here is a 1-acre lot. One of the goals is to provide an aesthetic upgrade. I think new homes absolutely bring value to the streetscape. They have your typical amenities, and if you see the architectural plans that were passed around, we even show a stone veneer on the front of the home. It would be a very attractive home and would certainly either complement or exceed some of the aesthetics of other homes in the area. So,
Do you think those benefits outweigh any detriments?
absolutely, I see no real detriment from the variance that we're seeking. This is a single-family home, a single-family zone, and we want to build a single-family home surrounded by other single-family homes. This is where this development should be placed.
As a planner, do you have a thought on whether there would be substantial detriment to the zone plan, zoning ordinance, public good? That is the negative criteria.
Correct. I see no detriment to the public good. I do not believe we impair the intent or purpose of the zone plan or the zoning ordinance. When you look at the history of this property, the timing of the zone changes, I believe this variance could be granted under either the C1 or C2 variance criteria.
Madam Chair, that's our case, subject to questions from you, the board, or the professionals, or any such instances.
Okay. So we did prepare a report dated April 15th. The applicant has indicated that he's, I guess, generally willing to comply with our comments. Just one note, and it's more process, the way we close out these types of applications through resolution compliance is part of resolution compliance for the revised drawings is also the preliminary engineering approval for building permit. So everything that you were hoping to defer to plot plan later needs to be part of your resolution compliance submission. So your Board of Health approvals for well and septic design and so on all get submitted as part of resolution compliance.
Sure, we have no issue with
It actually streamlines the process. We found it streamlines the process nicely. Also test pits, that kind of thing. For the board, they're proposing well and septic. In this case, it's a 1 acre lot. Historically, on undersized lots for the zone, we have asked for alternative treatment units to be considered. In this instance, it's not an undersized lot. It has sufficient lot area, just doesn't have sufficient lot width or frontage. So in this case, a conventional septic system would be, in my opinion, appropriate. They're not building on an undersized lot for the zone. Based on the lot layout, there is sufficient area for a conventional septic system. And I just make just an observation here. It's a 5-bedroom home, correct?
Yes.
It's a 5-bedroom home, and it says with a basement. We didn't see any basement plans, but I'm assuming it's an unfinished basement.
So at the moment, it's unfinished, but hopefully the board will understand that a buyer of the property may elect at some point in the future to finish the basement.
So a future finishing is different than coming in with revised plans that shows a fully finished basement and then a septic system for 10 bedrooms. So that's different, right? So whatever happens after the approval process, that's between the building department and the applicant.
Understood.
But for this application, it's a 5-bedroom home. The septic system will be designed for 5 bedrooms.
Correct,
Okay, all right. And you're proposing at this point an unfinished basement?
correct.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Mr. Peters?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Wilder, I don't know if I missed it or you didn't talk about the existing and proposed frontage improvements along the street.
Yes, so at the moment, we're not proposing curb or sidewalk along our frontage. We do agree as part of the waiver to contribute to the pedestrian safety fund. On our side, on this side of Gomberg Ave, the west side of Gomberg Ave, there is no curb or sidewalk. So I think the waiver is appropriate.
The driveway, what about the driveway?
Yeah, as it relates to the driveway, there was a request that we add a concrete apron, and we will provide that, and the driveway is proposed to be an asphalt driveway.
Thank you. Madam Chair, I believe Mr. Wilder's given testimony sufficient for the board to review and approve the bulk variance for the undersized lot. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from the board for this applicant or his professional?
Mr. Peters, approval based upon the C1 or the C2, or it doesn't make a difference?
Since I'm not an attorney, I'm not as confined to saying it doesn't matter. I think if the board feels strongly about one or the other, it's an existing condition that they can't fix. So my limited knowledge of the case law is that if we were to deny the application, we would put the property into inutility, or inversely condemn it. So from that perspective, if Mr. Wilder or Mr. Doyle want to specify which they want to go for the record, so that the board can correctly note it in the resolution, should we get that far, then that should be done.
Does anybody want my opinion?
Yes, please.
Okay. I always like to ask, I don't want to provide unsolicited advice. In all sincerity, this is a undersized lot case. If you were to ask me if there was a hardship here that was been identified by the applicant, I would say absolutely. Personally, I tend to think that for undersized lot cases, the C1 variance is more appropriate than the C2. That's not always true. I think the applicant has set forth a basis to grant under C1 or C2, but again, this is an undersized lot case, and I think the stronger argument here would be for the C1 variance. That would be my opinion. I don't know if the applicant wants to elaborate or correct me or agree or whatever, but it's their case, so.
Do we consider it undersized lot or lot width? Because it meets the acre, so is it technically?
I mean, they're deficient in lot width, right?
Okay.
So, while it's not technically an undersized lot for the zone, they do need a lot width variance because they're deficient in a certain aspect of the lot area, which is lot width.
Mr. Hurley?
I just have one question. I've heard 5 bedrooms, but I'm looking at the plan, I only see 4 bedrooms. Did I miss something here?
Or conversely,
I thought it was me. Good.
Doesn't have a closet, though.
So the 5th bedroom would be what is shown on the office on the first floor. That's sort of an optional bedroom. It does show an area in the back corner as shelves. That could easily be converted to a closet. So it's sort of an optional bedroom. Some buyers may want 4 bedrooms with the office, some may want the 5th bedroom.
Would that impact the septic system?
We're designing the septic system for 5 bedrooms. So
Okay.
if it comes back with only 4, the septic system would be slightly oversized. And it should also be noted that from an off-street parking standpoint, we also have enough parking for 5 bedrooms. So if we have 4 bedrooms, we're slightly overparked as well.
All right, thank you.
Any additional questions or comments? Would you like to make a closing statement before I open it to the public?
I think the case proves itself, doesn't need any further wording with respect to the question asked by Counselor Mr. Book. It's like a boxing match. Whether we win by a knockout or a split decision, it's still a win. And if it's probably easier, and I appreciate what Ryan's comments were about that's a more objective way of approving it than the subjective discretionary way of suggesting it's a better zoning alternative. So however it's written, we'll take it.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to open this to the public. Anyone wishing to come forward and make a comment about this application and the testimony you've heard tonight? Seeing no one come forward, I'm going to close public session. Board, it's up to us for discussion and a motion if possible.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Mr.
I
Book.
move to approve the application based upon the civil hardship variance and related testimony of that satisfied all the conditions, and I took heed of Mr. Bryant's comment, and satisfied with that, move to approve the application.
We have a motion and a second. Mr. Hurley, any other comment before we have roll call?
I agree that, based on what Mr. Book had indicated, that it's a C1 variance, clearly a C1 variance for hardship. So I would second that motion.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Mr. Hurley?
Yes.
Mr. Stafford Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Book?
Yes.
Mr. Hudak? Ms. Parnaz?
Yes.
Ms. Fritsch?
Yes.
Ms. Bradley?
Yes. Congratulations.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you. We are going to move forward to what was number 5
We just right next door.
on the agenda. Karen Mandelle, that's variance 3492, block 1401, lot 12.
Madam Chair, members and professionals, I have the privilege of representing Ms. Mandel on Lot 12. To save the most time possible for the board and Mr. Pfeffer's application, I won't give you the opening statement I did, other than to note that it's all the same except a different lot next door. So with that said,
Thank you.
I know that the record must have factual testimony and legal conclusions that I'll leave to Mr. Wilder. without reference to the past application, but on the specifics of this lot, would you testify as to why the variance ought to be granted?
Of course.
Thank you for raising your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony, information, questions, or comments that you're about to present before the board will represent the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
One more time, please, for the record. Please state your name, your affiliation, and your credentials.
Sure. Matthew Wilder, W-I-L-D-E-R. I'm a licensed professional engineer and planner in the state of New Jersey. I've appeared before this board on numerous occasions, as well as other boards across the state.
I think it's safe to say this board accepts your credentials. Thank you.
I always like bragging about myself, I'll be honest. So the property that we're here for this evening is Lot 12 within Block 1401. It's along Gomberg Avenue. This property was subject to a subdivision in the late 1980s. When the property was subdivided in the 1980s, it was part of the R40 zoning district. It remained that way until 2010, where the property was then converted to what was new in 2010, the R1 zoning district. The R40 zoning district and the R1 zoning district had many similarities, but probably the most glaring difference was with respect to lot width. The R40 zone had a lot width requirement of 100 feet, whereas the R1 zone had a lot width requirement of 150 feet. So what we have here this evening is a property that was subdivided, and at the time of subdivision was fully conforming. It was conveyed to the current owner in 1992 and had been a conforming lot for 18 years. And then when it was rezoned in R10, the issue arose that the property was no longer conforming due to a lot width deficiency. So what we're here proposing this evening is to obtain a lot width variance to allow us to build a single-family home. I have the variance plan on my board. Just to quickly give an overview of what we're proposing, it's your typical construction for a single-family home. We have a home that's approximately 2,500 square feet, 5 bedrooms, serviced by well and septic. It will have a asphalt driveway. We will provide a concrete apron at the street as was requested by your professionals. We are not proposing any curb or sidewalk at this time, so we are requesting that waiver, but we will provide a contribution into the pedestrian safety fund. Within Mr. Hill's letter of April 15th, there were several items that were requested, such as adding a dry well, which we will provide. I talked about the waiver for the curb and sidewalk. And then number 8, within Mr. Hill's letter, discussed the requirement to provide soil borings and soil tests to substantiate the elevation of the basement. As I understand, the resolution compliance acts as preliminary engineering in the Township of Jackson. We will provide those documents on a revised submittal with including the Board of Health approval, soil erosion approval, as it will streamline the process. So really what we're seeking tonight is a variance under the C1 or hardship variance criteria. 40:5570C1 states where there is a unique or exceptional situation affecting a property, a variance can be granted. These situations can vary. It could be that the property is exceptionally narrow or shallow, or it could be that the shape of the property is awkward. It could also be that there's an exceptional topographic condition affecting a property. What we have here is that a property was subdivided 37 years ago as a conforming subdivision, but due to a zone change is no longer conforming. We did offer buy-sell letters to our neighbors, and none of the neighbors wanted to buy or sell all or a portion of their property, nor did any of the neighbors want to buy or sell all or a portion of our property. So what you have is you have a condition that cannot be improved, which is the quintessential hardship. This is about a hardship application, as you'll find. We are consistent with the neighborhood. I will just note that there are many 100-foot wide lots, not necessarily relevant since we are seeking the variance under the authority of the C1 or hardship variance criteria. But I think it is important to note that we are consistent with the neighborhood both in the size and shape of the lot as well as the size of the home. I think it is important to know that we're not going to be an outlier in this part of town. So with that being said, I would respectfully request the board grant the variance that we're seeking under the C1 or hardship variance criteria. Thank you.
You're satisfied that we meet the negative criteria of not doing substantial detriment to zone plan, zoning ordinance, or public good?
That's correct.
I have no further questions. I'm glad to see he's a fast learner. He did say that we're going to take the resolution as compliance preliminarily. I'm a fast learner. I'm not going to talk about C2. I hope it'll be approved. Thank you.
Madam Chair Lady? Same question. Fifth bedroom.
So with this home, you don't have a configuration where there is an optional office on the first floor. What I'll point out is on the second floor, you'll notice that you have a vaulted ceiling for the living room on the first floor, so the second floor is open to the area below. In order to accommodate a fifth bedroom, that would likely be closed, so your living room would not be a two-story living room, and a fifth bedroom would be there. Again, we're designing everything for 5 bedrooms in the worst-case scenario to make sure the septic is large enough and to make sure we have adequate off-street parking.
So if I understand you correctly, that open area will not be open area.
Again, it's very much a function of the buyer of the home. So if the buyer wants a fifth bedroom, that would be an avenue where we could provide that fifth bedroom. If they only wanted 4 bedrooms and they wanted the cathedral or vaulted two-story living room ceiling, then that would be that. But we wanted to design everything as it relates to this project for what I'll call max build-out to ensure we didn't have an issue with septic later or with off-street parking.
So I was going to, because I saw the inconsistency, because the plan actually shows within the footprint a 4-bedroom dwelling. Your testimony was 5. It doesn't, I don't think there's a conflict there, Mr. Hurley. I think if you're approving a maximum of 5 bedrooms for this model, I think you're covered that way. If they choose to only build 4, then so be it. But the septic would need to be for 5.
The testimony is that at the moment, we're not seeking permission to have a finished basement. It will be unfinished, but a buyer in the future may opt to finish the basement. Obviously, if they were to put a bedroom down there, they would need to meet all applicable building codes with respect to egress. We're not here proposing that this evening.
Okay, so, yep, just for the board real quickly, this is not an undersized lot. This is a conforming lot as far as area goes. It's 1.05 acres. Historically, the board has preferred to see alternative treatment unit septic systems on undersized lots. However, in this case, there is adequate area within the property for a conventional septic system. So it's my recommendation that we just stick with a conventional septic system here and not an alternative unit. And I may have missed this. I apologize, Mr. Matt. You are proposing a contribution to the pedestrian safety fund in lieu of constructing curb and sidewalks?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you take no exception to any other comments in our letter?
That's correct.
Perfect. Great. Fast learner.
Tell my wife.
That's all I have.
Mr. Peters?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't take any exception to the testimony Mr. Wilder gave for a C1 variance. I believe he's shown the proof for the hardship, and I think the board can approve the application as submitted.
Okay. Would you like to make a closing statement, sir?
I think it's a good application. I hope you'll approve it and have an early evening.
Thank you. I'm going to open this to the public. Anybody wishing to come forward to make comment about the application, the testimony you've heard? Seeing no one come forward, I'm going to go ahead and close public session. Board, it's up to us for discussion and a motion if possible.
Second.
Motion and a second. Anyone wish to make any comments? Okay, we can have roll call, please.
Mr. Hurley,
Mr. Hurley?
Yeah, I think it's very clear, same situation we had before, that this is clearly a C1 variance type application for hardship. I would, do we have a motion yet? No.
Yes, there's a motion, yes.
And a second. My only comment is that we should include the waiver, I think, for the curbs and sidewalks, correct?
So roll call, please, Liz.
Mr. Hurley.
Yes.
Mr. Stafford Smith. Yes. Mr. Book.
Yes.
Mr. Hudak. Yes. Ms. Parnaz.
Yes.
Ms. Fritsch.
Yes.
Ms. Bradley.
Yes. Congratulations again.
Have a good evening. Thank you.
We're going to move forward to what was application number 3 on the agenda for this evening, A&A Truck Parts Preliminary and Final Site Plan 910 with use variance 3494, Block 2508, Lot 6 and 7. Mr. Pfeffer, whenever you're ready.
Good evening, everybody. Adam Pfeffer, attorney on behalf of the applicant, A&A Truck Parts, Inc. This evening, we have an application which we're seeking preliminary and final major site plan approval and use variance to utilize a site for fleet parking and equipment and container storage. The site is approximately 7.8 acres, and it's located in the LC Limited Commercial Zone. The board may recall not that long ago, we were before this board on a different site for a very similar type of application. And so that there are many things that we learned from that application and we've taken applied to this application. I will tell you, we have a couple of witnesses this evening. I do want to change a little bit in terms of the normal testimony. I am going to have Mr. Borden sworn in, our planner, and he will give you an overview of the site and what we're seeking to do. Before Mr. Borden then finishes his justifications and his testimony, I would like to then bring in Mr. Ray for traffic, and then bring back Mr. Borden just to give full circle, because I believe a lot of the justifications that are needed for the use variance will be better applied once you have all that testimony before you. Additionally, I do want to point out, and again, Mr. Borden will get into it, the statement of operations here are actually more so a statement of what we're not going to be doing. And that was also a derivative of that previous application. The board had a lot of good comments and wanted to make sure what was not going to be happening on the site. And so we've made that part of the original statement of operations. So you have that from the onset. With that, and now have Mr. Borden sworn in, go through his qualifications and accept him as an expert.
Good evening, Mr. Borden. Thank you for raising your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony, information, questions, or comments that you're about to present before the board will represent the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. If you would please state your name, provide your affiliation and credentials.
Certainly. Ian Borden, President of Professional Design Services in Lakewood, New Jersey. Graduate of Rutgers University in 1982, Bachelor of Science degree, licensed professional planner in the state of New Jersey. In good standing, have testified in front of this board and many, many other boards over the years.
Mr. Borden, this board accepts your credentials.
Thank you. Okay, what we have, we've provided some exhibits, handed them out to the board, as well as I thank you, Anthony, for putting them up on the board. We have First, let's just talk about the property. As noted, the property is lots 6 and 7. It is located on West Commodore. We have an aerial, as in is A1, north is to the top of the page. This aerial is dated March of this year. The site is in yellow. Again, it's 7.8 acres. Located, West Commodore runs right to left or east to west along our frontage, and then at the rear of our site, we have Lemming Road, a municipal road, improved municipal road that runs along the back of the property. The rear of the property, you can't see it on this map, but you'll see it on the next. Basically, from the word site down, is within a riparian buffer. There is a headwater of an unnamed stream that begins basically right on the southeastern property line. And there's a very, very, very small area of wetlands, but then there's a large, that small stream headwater is also a Category 1 water, as mapped by the DEP, and thereby there is a 300-foot riparian buffer. And we are not permitted to disturb that buffer, nor are we proposing to disturb that buffer. As you can see, the site is undeveloped. It is unforested, basically a grass field or a pasture, if you will. Surrounding the property, we have a warehouse to our east on the adjoining property. That property is also within the LC zone. That property received a variance in 2019 for a warehouse and office in the LC zone that's not permitted. And as you can obviously tell from the aerial, that site has been constructed and is occupied. We have, excuse me. We have on the blue lines are the zone lines. To the north of our site, along the north side of West Commodore, all of this area is in the LM, light industrial manufacturing zone. Primarily all developed. To the western part of the zone, where I'm pointing now, there's 3 or 4 separate uses that are junkyards and auto body repair facilities. Directly across the street from us is a large property that my office also did an approvals for, and it's been partially constructed for warehouses that are permitted in the LM zone. That's in 2 phases. The phase 1 building has been completed, and the phase 2 building, which is in this partially constructed area, has not been built yet. To our west and south is the R3 zone, and certainly the fact that we're adjoining the R3 zone has been a very important consideration in our consideration of uses that are appropriate for the site, as well as design of the site. If you don't mind, Anthony, if you go to A2. I'm going to briefly describe the site and then talk more about the statement of operations, and then I'll a little more explanation on the site. But you have here, this is the landscape plan that's part of the site plan package. We have simply just rendered it in color so you could to better illustrate what we're proposing. To start with, Lemming Road is on the left here, north is to the right of this plan. And so you can see this green area is that riparian buffer that I was describing. You see down in the southeastern corner, which is the bottom of this map, that's the very small area of wetlands, and we're not proposing any disturbance there. The gray, or I guess the brown, I guess it is, area, that's the proposed compacted asphalt millings that we're proposing for the parking and storage. We have the gray, which is the access drive coming in from West Commodore. See how we lined up the driveway with the existing driveway of the warehouse across the street. Mr. Ray, of course, will give traffic testimony. We have proposed a small office where I'm pointing now, basically an office trailer of not more than 400 square feet with a very small parking lot. We have 3 spaces there, one of which is handicapped, and one of the other 2 spaces will be EV ready. We have proposed a 50-foot buffer along the residential, which is to the top of this map in the left right here. Again, we can't develop in this entire green area. And we have proposed a full four-season screen of a double row of evergreen trees as well as a single row of deciduous trees along that. Understand that the ordinance for the ordinances in Jackson that between disparate uses, between commercial residential typically, is driven by the size of a building. So the required buffer for this project, given the very small size of the office that we're proposing, would be 10 feet as an empirical interpretation of the ordinance. We, however, though, understanding that we have residential neighbors, and we have proposed a 50-foot buffer. So we're 5 times what the required buffer is. And in addition to that, we've extended the landscape plantings down along Lemming Road, even though we're not developing, more than 300 feet from Lemming Road, as under recognition of the fact that the property is generally, while there is some scattered trees in here, it is generally open field, open grass. So I think that's the wise neighborly thing to do, is to, and that is a permissible activity in the riparian zone, is to plant those trees. So our building coverage that we're proposing is 0.1%, where 25% is permitted. So we're obviously well under any building coverage permitted in the LC zone. And our proposed impervious coverage is 46%, where 60% is permitted. Next, some conversation, basically repeating what's already in the statement of operations, but I want to make sure it's clearly part of the record. First, the board members should be familiar with A Trucking. They have existing sites in town that have been approved years ago for this similar use, most notably a 20-acre site on Bismarck Road in Jackson. They are a locally owned company. Their primary recycling operation is in Freehold, and this project would have no relation to the recycling activities other than the parking of trucks and storage of storing containers and equipment. So the A&A will utilize the site for their own use, but they will also serve as the lessor for tenants that may occupy the site, and A&A is responsible to ensure that the performance standards contained in our project, in our statement of operations, are fully enforced. It is proposed to utilize the site for parking and storage of materials and equipment by contractors. All trucks and trailers parked on the site must be functional, operational, and registered. The maximum height of any storage that we're proposing, say a contractor storage, is 20 feet. That is consistent with previous approvals on other sites. Excuse me. We did design the site. I know important also from previous applications, we're identifying where things are parked and where access routes are. Obviously, we have the main access road coming off of West Commodore. We have our truck parking along the front here. It's identified on the site plan, which is the next exhibit. But so we have the truck parking along this curb line parallel with West Commodore. I should also note that this curb line along West Commodore, I talked about the increased buffer. We also set this curb line along West Commodore back 40 feet from the existing curb at West Commodore, which is double what the requirements are. The township ordinance for setback of curbing requires a 20-foot safety island. We have a 40-foot safety island. And the reason for that is it allows us to do additional landscaping up here. Very important to us, to my client. If you've ever visited their sites, you'll know that they keep them in an extraordinarily neat and clean condition. But it's very important to provide a attractive streetscape along West Commodore. We did the same thing, honestly, along the warehouse across the road, and important to do it here as well. All proposed activities on the site will conform to the performance standards, typically like noise, glare, items like that that are contained in the ordinance, Section 244-160. The normal hours of operation are 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., Monday through Saturday. No employees are anticipated to be at the site during normal operation. The trailer is for, in case there's one there, but it's not thought to be occupied during a full business day. There is I did skip over the fact that we do propose an 8-foot fence surrounding the parking area. It is a chain link fence with the slats for view. There is a question, I think, there was a discrepancy in our plans of green or black. I believe it's green is what they propose. But there is a gate in the main access drive, and that gate is only operated by key code or employee. It will not be nobody from the public can just drive into the site, only an employee of A&A or a leased tenant. There will be a Knox box provided. Knox box, of course, is a box with a key so that the emergency services can get access to the site 24/7. While the hours of operation are 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., given that we are leasing to people who, for example, truck drivers, and this will become more talked about in the planning section of my testimony, but from an operational perspective, a truck driver might arrive at the site from an overhaul road journey after 6 p.m. And we do have the statement in the operations that they can just simply park their vehicle and then pick up their personal vehicle and go home. One of the key parts of this is to allow people, individual contractors, for example, that are truck drivers, to be able to park their truck, whereas they're not allowed to do so on their own residential property. But they may arrive during off hours, and it's important to allow them the chance to park and leave. We do propose a ground sign along the frontage next to the driveway on the west side that fully conforms with the ordinance. Maximum height is 6 feet, area 30 square feet, and a setback of 25 feet with the base being landscaped. I think the planner's review, I believe, noted the fact that we did not include a refuse. We didn't honestly think one was needed, but I do agree that we will provide one, and that refuse enclosure will fully comply with the ordinance requirements and have the masonry walls with separate areas for trash and recycling. It's not a trash generating facility, it's a parking facility, but it's important, I guess, when you want to throw out a coffee cup or something, give them a place to do so. Or in my case, a bag of empty fast food. The office will be serviced by there is public water in the street, a 16-inch water main in West Commodore. We'll connect to that for public water for the office. We also have received approval from the Fire Prevention Bureau. We do provide some hydrants on the property. They've asked for that. We have provided those, so that will service that as well. There is no sewer immediately available in the site. The sewer in front of the site is a 16-inch force main, which we cannot connect directly to, so we are proposing a very small septic system. We do have Mr. McFarland here to do engineering testimony as needed, but we have multiple stormwater management facilities. Just to describe it, we have 3 small-scale infiltration basins, 2 linear ones in the front and 1 in the back, along with a recharge system, which is at the top middle there. And we do agree to, just to make sure it's on the record, I do agree to comply with all recommendations and requirements of the engineering and planning review. So otherwise, my planning testimony of the D variance and some C variances that we also require or request are next. I think it would be, let me just introduce this first as a segue to Mr. Ray. If you don't mind going to A4, Anthony. As part of examining the impacts of our project, I think it's important to consider, and we did consider, what an impact of a permitted use would be on the property and the surrounding area. So we prepared this concept plan, limited commercial zone, which I'll delve into more with the planning, but just as, again, this is a segue to traffic, does permit medical and professional office, among many other uses, and I'll list those later. But we did a concept plan, a conforming concept plan of an office building, and we have that shown as Exhibit A4. And that plan shows a two-story office in the top middle, I guess, of the property, of 56,800 square feet and 284 parking spaces. So that was just prepared to allow Mr. Ray in part to do a comparative analysis of traffic of the proposed parking facility compared to what a permitted facility might generate. So I think with that, I'll leave that to Jonathan, unless I missed something.
Mr. Bourne, if you can, just, I know it's in the statement of operations. I know we talked about what the applicant is going to be doing. If we can, just talk about the things that we're definitely not doing, so we can just put that on the record.
I only skipped over like the most important thing. Yes, the following activities as listed in the statement are not permitted on the property. Retail sales, rental or leasing of any vehicles or equipment on the site, manufacturing or processing, repair or maintenance facilities or activities, storage of any liquids or hazardous materials, storage of any solid waste, storage of any loose soil material, vehicle or equipment dismantling or recycling, junkyard, and lastly, overnight sleeping or any occupancy of a vehicle on the site. There is a sign that will be posted on the gate, the entry gate, listing all these activities, and they will all be included in the individual leases for any tenant that is parking these things.
On the applicant, the apartment condition that none of those uses.
Yes.
Okay. I have a quick question on the page A3, Exhibit A3, small-scale underground basin. What's going to be stored there?
That's the stormwater basin I was talking about. If you
Okay.
go back to A2, please, Anthony. That's this square area up here. That's just a pipe and stone underground to stores.
I thought that's what
To
you were
store
talking about, but I
stormwater.
just wanted to be sure.
Yes. That's just underground.
Through the chair, if I may? Yeah, just a quick question, Ryan. You said you won't be dismantling vehicles on the site. Will you be storing vehicles that will go to
No.
the dismantling?
Not on this property.
Okay.
No.
I believe Mr. Bourne indicated in the testimony before they have to be registered.
Correct.
Vehicles that are in usable condition.
And that's exactly why we add that caveat that all vehicles must be functional and properly licensed. Where obviously equipment is not all licensed and not over-the-road vehicles, but it's got to be operational and or licensed if appropriate.
Through the chair. On the south side of that property, can you point where West Fish Road is and Lemming? Because Lemming does not.
Lemming is right here. So it runs kind of parallel to West Commodore, but that's Lemming Road right there.
How far is it from Burke?
If you go back to A1, Anthony, please. You can see Burke Road is right here, Mr. Stafford Smith. So,
I didn't see where Lemming went that far. When I drove it, it didn't appear to go.
I'm sorry?
Is it a paper street? Is Lemming a paper street at one point?
No.
No, it's improved. I think
No. It's fully improved
Yeah.
from Burke over to
it's just
Diamond.
very narrow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of curves and comes down right here.
Thank you.
Okay, so that's the testimony of Mr. Bourne. We'll come back and give the justifications for the variances. But this time, Mr. Bourne, has any questions for Mr. Borden, we'll call Mr. Ray to give traffic.
Through the chair?
Yes.
Can I just ask a quick question? Do you have, excuse me, like a configuration of what the parking and the setup of the site is going to look like?
Yes, if you go to A3, Anthony, please. Maybe zoom in a little bit. So here's the actual site plan. So we have our paved driveway, which is 40 feet wide, comes in perpendicular to West Commodore. Wonderful, thank you. You have the office here with those 3 parking spaces I described. And then you have this fire lane that runs to the west and to the east. And the area between the fire lane and the curb line, which is here, would be where the trucks park.
So,
They would park perpendicular to the curb line, facing or backed up to Commodore. And then the area on the backside of the fire lane, between the fire lane and the edge of the pavement millings, would be the area where containers and equipment and trailers would be parked.
okay, so it seems like the entire back area, like you mentioned, is that riparian buffer, and then it's just the front area that's going to have truck parking, just one row of trucks?
Yes.
And then that area of the millings is for containers?
Yeah,
And-
I mean, maybe I could see where they could park trucks along the fire lane, you know, facing, again, the same direction, perpendicular to the Commodore. But generally, and from that point back, what I'm pointing now would be all the equipment, trailer storage.
Okay. I was just wondering what was going to be in this whole back area, but that,
Right.
I guess, explains it. Thanks.
Through the chair. Yeah, Mr. Board, for the R3 residents, I see that you've set up a 50-foot buffer, but you also, in your statement of operations, you talk about materials and supplies, looks like you can go as high as 20 feet. So my concern from the point of view of those residential units along in that R3 zone, trucks are going to come in, vehicles are going to come in, they're going to have lights, the lights are going to be bright. Are we addressing that? That's one. Two, can these shipping containers, are you expecting to stack those shipping containers? And if so, why and how many? And will that site be somehow buffered from those residents? So I'm really concerned about a serious and significant effect upon the neighbors from the impact of this.
I understand. Yeah, go back to A2, please, Anthony. As far as the buffering goes, that's why we did the double layer, the double row of evergreen trees with the single row of deciduous trees.
I guess I don't understand. I mean, I get trees, but the trees can be thin and the lights can go through, so there can be a screen behind it.
Well,
Trees can be full trees. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I think what I'm gonna kind of go on the fly here a little bit, and something I probably, hearing you speak, Mr. Book, I think I should have thought of this, and that is that what we should do, given the fact that this buffer is not forested, in other words, a lot of times we're dealing with a forested buffer and we're trying to supplement it, so we don't want to disturb it too much. In this case, I'm not limited by that. I think what I'd like to do is add detail to this, which is we would create, in a 50-foot buffer, we can create a mound. In other words, call it a 4-foot-high mound, and then put the trees on top of the mound. And what that does, and the reason to me that would be important, and I believe, in my opinion, would answer your concern, we're always looking to shield headlights. I mean, that's the big thing, any parking lot, certainly one where trucks are involved as well. Even though we don't expect much nighttime activity because our hours end at 6 p.m. But that 4-foot-high berm would be a absolute screen of any headlights, because headlights are not higher than 4 feet. And then on top, tree that has a planted height of probably 10 to 12 feet. And when you plant these trees at that age, which is typically a 2 or 3-year-old evergreen, or actually 4 or 5-year-old evergreen, they're like Christmas tree. They're fully leaf, you know, branches extend almost all the way to the ground. So I think that certainly would be, from the first day of operation, that would be an effective screen of over 15 feet high. Certainly would screen the entire truck, not just the headlights. As far as the stacking, we are absolutely not proposing to stack containers. That will not be permitted. And obviously, we share your concern of the neighbors. I mean, it is a light, limited commercial zone. You're permitted to do commercial work here. Again, that'll be part more of my planning testimony, but even though we're not disturbing within 300 feet of Lemming Road, I had asked my client, and again, my client is one of the best clients I work with because they're so, they live these sites, they work them. I mean, this is what they do, and they're Jackson residents. We planted I can't put fill in here because that's a riparian zone. I'm not permitted to do that, but I can plant the trees. And that's far away, and that is far away from the site.
For the chair,
Yes, Evan.
I'd like to kind of build on Ms. Parnaz's and Mr. Book's questions. Along the lines of the area closest to the residential units to the south there, I'm sorry, to the west. You're proposing, I don't know, generally four different types of uses for the open gravel area. The storage of trucks, which that tells, would you agree that that's because those trucks could be used on a daily basis or even multiple times during the day? That's probably one of the more intense aspects of the storage that you're proposing is the trucks, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And then, and so I think it makes sense to have them up closest to Commodore in that case.
That's why we
and
did
away from the residences. But the other types of storage, you were talking about containers, shipping containers for storage of materials, right? Typically, those shipping containers are put on the ground and they stay there. You might have some daily other either tenants or A&A coming in and picking material up from a daily basis. So I could see that being not as intense as the trucks, but daily activities occurring. What were the other things you were storing?
Equipment, trailers, like backhoes, excavators, basically things that a small contractor might have to store.
So in your mind, what are the least intense items that will be stored that you can classify? Would it be the containers, shipping containers?
I think it would be the containers, yes,
Okay.
because they're not used. Typically, the equipment might, in a perfect world, meaning a perfect world being a full employment and full work days, those would be picked up in the morning, leave the site, and then returned at the end of a day.
Yeah.
And that would be just one in, one out, and one in.
And a lot of that's-
the containers may not move for days at a time.
Right, and a lot of what's in the containers are people are coming up in work trucks or pickup trucks or vans, so it's lighter duty vehicles and not
That's correct.
low boys carrying equipment out.
That's correct.
Okay, so, and this goes to a comment in our letter and similar comments on prior applications with A&A is, it's a good idea to delineate in certain areas here what to expect to be stored. So I think it's critical, at least in the area to the west here, that an area be designated for storage container use, maybe along that property line, which from what I'm hearing is probably the least intense use that you're
Yes.
proposing. And then likewise along the southern and northern sides of the site, block off areas of, say, this is where the zoning officer and code compliance officer can expect trailers with equipment on it. This is where the code enforcement officer can expect maybe raw materials being stored there and so on. But doesn't block off some areas and then also demonstrate that there's adequate site circulation through those areas as well. My only other concern is here the differentiation of the site between A&A's use and tenant use, and whether or not the areas designated for tenant use should be somehow isolated from the rest of the site. I thought we did something similar to that on the Progress Place application. We delineated the tenant area versus what was non-tenant.
We did that on the Bismarck site.
Bismarck Road. Yeah.
Yes. But that's a much larger site, and that, this site's 15% the size of that site, less than 20%.
Yeah, I
So
think we did Jersey barriers and interior fencing.
That's correct,
right?
that's correct, because that site was, basically, each of those tenant areas was the size of this entire site. We can do that. I I do appreciate your comments, Mr. Hill, and I think those are very good comments about focusing the specific types of storage in those areas that are the least used. I think that's a very good idea, and we'd certainly accommodate that.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair Lady? Mr. Borden, along the lines that Mr. Hill just talked about, in your statement of operation, you say that A&A will utilize the site for their own use and serve as the lessor for tenants. Are you designated specific sites for a tenant to occupy, or is it just going to be, I mean, there's a difference in,
I'm saying the
your
entire...
attorney can explain, there's a difference between having a lease and a license,
I understand.
all right? A lease to me means I'm going to designate an area for you. This is yours, nobody else is going to use it for the term of the lease. You give me a license and everybody's driving around haphazardly.
I understand. I think, in my opinion, my understanding is, more importantly, that areas will be identified to each tenant. It won't be a line that's in any legal document or a filed document, but it'll be part of the lease agreement between A&A and any particular contractor or truck driver.
Well, how do we know then, along the same lines as Mr. Hill just indicated, how do we know how many trucks, for example, can occupy the site if you don't designate the number of spaces?
I understand, and what we also don't know is the ratio of how many trucks, how many 18-wheel over-the-haul truck drivers might want to lease here versus how many landscape contractors that has one truck, one trailer, and one Bobcat, for example, or we just don't know the complete mix, detailed mix of what the different ratio of trucks to trailers to equipment is.
Well, isn't that my point? I mean, exactly, I think we need to know where the trucks are going to be, where the containers
Correct.
are going to be, where there's other various kind of trucks are going to be.
I completely agree, and that's why we were very detailed in the site plan on where the trucks would be. Mr. Hill is advocating, and I fully agree, is further breaking that down. I think you and he are saying this, I'm hearing the same thing, breaking down the rear of the site for the storage to very specifically identify where the containers would be and the other types of items being stored. So
Well, quite
we
honestly-
are in agreement on that.
Quite honestly, I think I'd rather see something more specific than just an area. I'd like
That's
to
fine.
see
I understand.
where it's going to be, how many you're going to be able to will occupy the site.
I understand.
Things of that nature. Okay.
Okay.
The other question I had is relative, again, to your statement of operation is on control. It appears, and I'm reading from your statement of operation, that A&A will be responsible for compliance of any regulation, any conditions imposed by this board relative to, in quotes, its tenants. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And they will be on site to do that?
Yes.
I also noticed you mentioned that there would be a sign posted there.
Yes.
When I read that, I wasn't sure if the sign was what's going to control, or will it be someone on site to make sure that someone's complying with the terms of the sign?
Right. The sign is just an identifier of the site, just so people know they're going to the right spot. That's all the sign is for. The prohibitions will be listed on the interior gate, and A&A, as the owner, will be responsible for all enforcement of all these conditions of the operation of the site.
Okay. Relative to the use that is proposed here, can you tell me, based on the zone regulations that we have, is there a use that is most comparable to what you're proposing? A use that's permitted that is most comparable?
I would say there really is not. The adjoining zones, the LM zone, and allows these types of things, but that was part of my planning. You're kind of getting ahead of my planning testimony. My planning testimony was to describe all the uses permitted in the zone and how I believe that we would qualify for the D1 variance.
Then I'll wait for your planning
Thank you.
testimony. Thank you.
I just want to go back real quick, and I think it would be important to further delineate the areas that we were talking about, but also when you go through that delineation, identify in there that there's like a maximum of 20 trailers that could be stored here, or that kind of thing. And that's just a dimensional analysis based on how you delineate those areas. You did go back and you indicated that you're going to comply with all the engineering comments in our April 15th letter. There were some open-ended questions I put in there that I think we should get some answers on. So you are requesting a waiver from curbing and sidewalk or from installing curbing and sidewalk, and you agree to make a contribution to the pedestrian safety fund. I'd like to point out to the board that the property adjacent to this, it's the Army Supply, Army Navy warehouse supply place. The board did request that curbing and sidewalk be installed as part of that application. You felt it was important to get some sidewalks and curbing in that area. So they did install it. This site's right next door to it. There's a large warehouse site across the street. I believe they're putting curbing and sidewalk in as well. So I'll leave that to the board as far as whether or not you should or you want to grant a waiver from installing curbing and sidewalk. The question came up regarding fire lanes. I understand that the fire official has indicated where he wants fire lanes designated. However, I'm thinking that from a constructability maintenance standpoint, you have asphalt millings. I know you can compact them, but they also act more as gravel than they do as asphalt. I'm trying to picture in my mind how you paint a loose gravel surface and have it. I don't think you can, to be honest with you. So you're not, instead of painted surfaces and painted areas for delineation, how are you proposing to delineate the fire lanes?
I think we would do a system consistent with how we did Bismarck, which is we put periodic signs along the boundary of the fire lane.
Okay. All right. We would just need to see some details, updated details on that. Yeah, we did ask for within those areas designated for storage that there's adequate drive aisles for site circulation, just providing somewhat of an internal road network that will be that's easily maintained and to try to control the chaos of a big open area for storage. We did point out there are some. The stormwater collection system here are 3 infiltration basins, which are the preferred method by DEP and our ordinance for managing stormwater. And while I don't take any exception that this stormwater system can work, I think there's some discrepancies we pointed out in your reports.
That's correct.
In your stormwater report. I don't think it's going to have a significant issue on what you're doing. It may cause you to have to expand your underground system a little bit. We did ask to make sure that underground system is adequately designed to withstand H20 loading, which is heavy truck traffic loads. So these are plastic chambers that are in the ground. We don't want to see them collapse. So there is a way to design them like that. We just wanted some additional details for that. We did ask for some additional test pits to be excavated with permeability testing for soils. Question came up whether or not the 2 basins in the front of the property, they are each approximately 3 foot deep, whether or not a 4 foot high post and rail fence should be installed around them. I believe we've had them on all the other applications in the past.
I had agreed to comply with all items, including that.
Okay.
It did come, I didn't disagree with that, and I don't disagree with that, but also do understand that unlike other sites, this site is completely fenced with an 8-foot fence. So all we're seeking with that post and rail to do is to protect it from the tenants themselves. The basins are already...
No, the basins are outside the...
Oh, that's right, you're right. I just caught myself. You are correct.
Yeah.
I forgot, we ran the fence along the curb line.
Which,
Thank
which,
you.
actually, which makes sense, because now those basins
Yes.
are more open areas, landscaped, so.
And that's why I did
I-
disagree.
Yeah, I think the 4-foot-high post and rail fence just adds to the aesthetics of the basins, or it just adds to the
Yes.
aesthetics as well, so. Okay. But other than that, those are the big comments I
I'd
had.
forgotten that. Normally, like on the other sites, like Bismarck, we ran the fence right along the right-of-way. But in this case, I'd forgotten. We ran it at the curb line, so to maintain that streetscape along West Commodore.
I have one other comment. Nowhere in your statement of operation does it indicate that this will be used as a public parking lot for any auction events,
Not at
correct?
all, no.
Okay. 'Cause I know the auction's been getting pretty popular over the years.
Are they? Okay. No, absolutely is not a use that we're proposing.
Okay.
Couple questions. One is, I'm a little concerned about the verbiage that's used in the statement of operations. You seem to have thrown a lot of wild cards in there. And what I mean by that is normal hours of operation are typically 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. So that leaves the door pretty wide open for something that would be atypical.
That's not our intent. We'll remove the word typically.
So the hours.
That's not our intent.
6 a.m. to 6 p.m.
Yes.
And then also you say, the very next sentence, truck and trailers may be moved, however, during any time. So that, to me, means that this could be a 24-hour operation with internal movement of equipment and trucks and trailers and so forth by that statement.
And that, oh,
Is it correct, the intent is 6 to 6, however, no operation will occur
Right.
past that, except for if someone ends up coming at 7 p.m., drops off their truck
Right.
and leaves, just because they were in traffic or took them longer to get back, is that correct?
that's correct. That's all.
But that's not what that states. I understand what you're saying, but that's not
Understood.
what this,
We could clean that up, and that is the full intent, 6 to 6, except for someone's running late to come back, not doing operations, just getting their car, dropping
Yeah.
off the one vehicle and picking up.
Yeah, I think that would be, we can limit that to dropping off after.
right.
And that's
that
fine.
leads me to the next question, and that is, I envision that there's going to be employees driving in their personal cars, leaving them there, getting in these tractor trailers or whatever they may be, and then driving off. And I don't see anywhere in these plans, like where they would park their personal cars. And I think Mr. Hurley brought it
Right.
up before, that, we don't have a layout of,
I understand.
other than where you said the tractor trailers would
Right.
be,
The-
and where where Evan had said where the containers would
I understand. The intent is that anybody who's driving their vehicle there would park it in the same spot where the truck was parked. In other words, they would pull up, move the truck, put the car where the truck was, leave for the day. It's what happens on Bismarck every day. I know,
be. I find that hard to believe that
okay,
someone
well, it's what happens. I've seen it happen. I mean, that's assuming that we're fully leased and everything's occupied, which in the real world doesn't normally exist. But I've seen that happen with over-the-road truck drivers, at least at the other sites, where they will just pull up, move their truck when they're leaving, and then pull the car in and drive off.
I envision somebody coming in, parking their vehicle, their personal vehicle, locking it, getting out, jumping.
No, I mean, but they're limited to their area, that they can't park in somebody else's spot. So that is the way it works, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Any additional questions or comments for Mr. Borden? Would you like to bring up Mr. Ray now, Mr. Pfeffer?
Good evening, Mr. Ray. Thank you for raising your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony, information, questions, or comments that you're about to present before the board will represent the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
If If you would please state your name, provide your affiliation and credentials.
Sure. John Ray, REA, a professional engineer with McDonough and Ray Associates, 1431 Lakewood Road, Manasquan, New Jersey.
Mr. Ray, you had an opportunity to review the site plan and the application, as well as prepare a traffic study.
I did, yes.
If you can, just walk us through what your findings were.
Okay, well, this is a use variance application, so of course, the first thing I needed to do was do a comparison of the amount of traffic that would be generated by the proposal that is in front of the board as compared to a permitted use. Earlier in the evening, Mr. Borden had showed you an exhibit where a 56,800 square foot office building, two-story office building, could be constructed on the site. We could provide enough parking under the Jackson Township ordinance requirements, 284 spaces, if I'm not mistaken. And based on the Institute of Transportation Engineers data, such an office building would generate 82 and 86 peak hour traffic movements respectively for the morning and afternoon peak hours. In order to evaluate what kind of traffic this site would generate, we did go out to the Bismarck Road site, which the applicant has in town. It is the larger of the two sites that the applicant has. There's another facility on Diamond Road. The Bismarck Road site is 20 acres. I think Mr. Borden testified this site is, and if I'm not mistaken, it's about 7.8 acres, but the portion that's being developed is significantly less than that. So in order to model how much traffic would be generated, we did some traffic counts at the Bismarck Road site, and the Bismarck Road site generated 14 trips during the morning peak hour and 41 trips during the afternoon peak hour. So in terms of the traffic comparison between the permitted use and the proposed use will generate significantly less traffic than a permitted two-story office building of approximately 56,800 square feet. We took it a step further than that. We're very familiar with the area. We've done numerous traffic impact studies in the area for warehouse projects, for the Jackson 21 residential projects. We looked at the redevelopment of Glory's Market over on the corner of Cedar Swamp and 526. We obtained that traffic study. We included all of that traffic into a projection of 2034 traffic volumes, including NJDOT's background traffic growth rate data for the area. And we did a level of service analysis for our site driveway to West Commodore Boulevard, which will be opposite a large warehouse project which is approved and under construction on the north side of West Commodore. I believe the address is 340 West Commodore, and there's in excess of 300,000 square feet of warehouse space being constructed opposite our driveway on the other side of West Commodore. Of course, 526 West Commodore Boulevard is under the jurisdiction of Ocean County. We looked at the access, the site distance. It's my intent to work with Mr. Borden. Should we get the use variance application and come back for a full site plan, we would restripe West Commodore to have a left turn lane entering our facility. It would be a mirror image of the left turn lane that is proposed for the warehouse building on the north side of West Commodore. It will be lined up with it properly from an engineering perspective. That would be our proposal. And we looked at the level of service for the design year of 2034, which is what Ocean County requires. They require you to look at a 10-year horizon. And like I said, we looked at all of the other approved and under construction projects in the area, the NJDOT's growth rate, and we came to a conclusion that our driveway access to West Commodore would operate at acceptable levels of service for the morning and afternoon peak hours, level of service C for the morning peak hour, level of service D for the afternoon peak hour. So we went a little bit, probably, further than we would normally do for a use variance application, because we wanted to demonstrate to the board that should the use variance be approved, that the access to West Commodore for this project could operate safely and efficiently and not just come in and tell the board that we're going to generate less traffic than a permitted use. We did do a full traffic impact study for the proposal.
Through the
Mr.
chair.
Book?
I like the idea of the projections and the aggregate. Did you do the projection with the 56,000 square foot office building and the traffic that would generate? Would you still be at a D or would it be worse?
It would be worse. I did not do a level of service projection, but it would be, we're talking about during the morning peak hour, 5 times as much traffic during the afternoon peak hour, twice as much traffic. So even if the level of service designations, the C and D, remain the same, the delay that would be associated with the extra traffic would certainly be higher, so it would be worse.
One last question. Would you just translate for me? I always forget. What does a D mean?
Okay.
To the folks on the road that are
Sure.
driving?
Levels of service relate to the amount of delay that motorists experience entering the roadway. Level of service D is, usually my secretary puts the definitions in the reports. Bear with me one second. Here they go. Level of service A, which is very hard to attain, is less than 10 seconds per vehicle of delay entering the road. Level of service B is between 10 and 15 seconds of delay. C is between 15 and 25 seconds of delay, which will be our morning peak hour level of service. D is between 25 and 35 seconds per vehicle of delay. Level of service E is between 35 and 50 seconds, and F is in excess of 50 seconds. That's for an unsignalized intersection.
Thank you.
Madam Chair Lady?
Yes, Mr. Hurley.
Mr. Ray, I'm just wondering, did you do any analysis for any other type of use that would be permitted other than this office building, something that may generate less traffic?
Just the office building, which is a permitted use, and I had asked Mr. Borden to prepare an exhibit, and, that would be something that we could build that would have adequate parking as per your ordinance.
Well, I guess my question is there something there that could be built that is permitted that would generate less traffic? Did you look into that?
I did not.
Okay. You also mentioned glories. Was that used in your analysis?
Yes.
In what way?
We took the traffic study that was done by another firm. We took their traffic study and incorporated that traffic into our projections for West Commodore Boulevard. It's about an 18,600 square foot, overall commercial complex.
And you think that site is comparable to this proposed site?
Do I think what site is
Glories.
Oh, no, I just included the traffic from the Glories redevelopment in the projections of what's going to be passing our driveway on West Commodore.
Yeah, but
I don't think they're similar, no.
My only thought here and concern is Glories is right at an exit of the interstate, 195.
Right.
Wouldn't that have kind of a different type of impact on that area other than this? I mean, is it fair to use Glory's site for traffic information and compare it to this site?
I'm not comparing it to this site. All I wanted to indicate, when I did the full traffic impact study for this project, I took the traffic from the Glories redevelopment. I assumed it would be totally built out, fully occupied. I took the projections of the Glories traffic from that traffic study and included them in my projections of 2034 site traffic passing our driveway on West Commodore. That's the only thing I did with Glories. I'm not comparing the two sites.
Okay.
Glories is going to generate a lot more traffic than this project, but I included that traffic in the projections for what's passing our driveway in the design year.
Okay. I guess that's what I don't understand. It almost sounds as if you're including that information in your analysis.
I am.
But that information may not be comparable in location to this proposed location.
Well, if I didn't include that, I think somebody on the board would beat the heck out of me because I used the proper protocol, I believe.
Yeah, for the chair, Mr. Hurley, he's not, He's using the traffic that's proposed to be generated. He's not neglecting it. He's using
I
that.
didn't say he was neglecting.
No,
it.
understand. He's using that to further analyze how that's going to impact traffic at this site.
Yeah, he's considering it.
Yes.
Of
Yes.
course, I understood
Right.
that.
Which is what we do, which is what we do throughout the town on these types of studies. We use known development and applications that have been approved and build them into these analyses to be more conservative.
I understand. I mean, a lot of this is a statistical analysis, and if you use statistics, I should have been dead 10 years ago. I know a lot of people probably saying, your mouth to God's ear, but that's the way it goes. I have no further questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Through the chair, Mr. Ray, Glory's...
Is that Mr. Hofstein?
Yes.
I haven't seen
How
you
are
in a
you?
while.
Haven't seen you in a while either. Glory's Corner.
Yes, sir.
We know now there's going to be a Wawa with a convenience store, a liquor store that is almost completed.
Correct.
If it's not, and plus another project. Does that help you determine how much traffic will be apart from somebody putting in an office building when you consider this?
I will not testify as to the traffic study that was done for Glory's. It was done by another firm, but I will tell you, Mr. Hofstein, that the Wawa with the gas component to it generates, based on the ITE and the NJDOT data, 75% of that traffic during the morning and afternoon peak hours is pass-by traffic. It's traffic that's heading up to 195 and heading north on Cedar Swamp that they're going to stop in, they're going to get gas, get coffee, whatever. Same thing in the afternoon when they're heading home. That's where they're going to stop to pick up things that they need. So a big percentage of that traffic will be passed by. Not as much for the other components, the liquor store and the other things that are going to be on the site. But all of that traffic we did take the traffic study. I believe Dynamic Traffic did the study. I'd have to the big file. But we did include that traffic in our projections of what will be passing our site on West Commodore for the 2034 design year. That's all we can do.
Thank you.
Through the chair.
Yes.
Mr. Ray, can you give me an idea on how long or how much of a footprint these left-hand turning lanes will occupy? I'm considering a stacking effect of tractor trailers to
Right.
go north and south into the two projects that'll be there.
That will be determined by Ocean County when we make an application to Ocean County. They will look at the level of service calculations that we've done and the anticipated length of the queuing that will be needed, and whatever the length of the left turn lanes that are required, could be 100, 150 feet. Whatever the county requires, we will be required to do. We're not quite there yet because we haven't made a county application, and we won't unless we get a use variance and we come in for the site plan. But that'll be determined by the county, and I promise you they will not let us skimp on the length of the left turn lane. They never do.
Mr. Hartman prides himself on that.
Any additional questions for Mr. Ray?
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I know I indicated earlier that I was going to call Mr. Borden back to do the justifications and the proof for the variances. Being that from the comments, we're going to have to make some revisions to our plans. I don't want to bore the board with those justifications, especially if we're going to be making some modifications. Obviously, if there's anybody from the public, we'd love to hear their comments and input. And again, if there are any other comments from the board, but I don't think it's needed this evening to put those justifications on, especially if we're going to be making some changes.
I'm going to open this to the public. Anybody wishing to come forward and make any statements or comments based on what you've heard this evening, please come forward. If you could just do me one favor after you're sworn in, pull the microphone down.
Pardon me, I have disabilities, so you'll have to yell at me and
You can
speak
yell at us,
slowly.
that's fine.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, if you could please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony, information, questions, or comments that you're about to present before the board will represent the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you very much. If you would please state your name.
Liesl Tracy,
Spell your last name.
Treacy,
And provide your address, please.
361 West Commodore Boulevard, Jackson, New Jersey.
Thank you very much.
Okay, can I start?
Oh, yes.
I am the person that is in the R3 zone directly west of this property, of which they have offered a 50-foot buffer. I have a lot of concerns. I'm glad they added a 50-foot buffer, but I'm hearing comparisons with what they did across the street, which was planting trees, and their trees are 4 foot high and half dead. So that's not going to be much of a buffer. And they also did not, as far as I recall, provide sidewalks or curbing for the warehouse across the street. Seiko, the military place, did put nice sidewalk and nice curbing in, and I think that should be continued. That's one. As far as the buffer, I would have preferred a minimum 9-foot solid wall. And I would also like to say that all lighting, of which I assume there will be quite a bit, should face east, so as not to come in my windows. And the biggest concern I have about this property is that...
Ma'am, if you could just speak into the microphone because it's hard to hear.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right. Thank you.
The biggest concern I have with this property is this lease arrangement, which is very open-ended. It's like, okay, we're requesting use variance for fleet parking, equipment, and container storage in an LC zone. Now, mind you, LM is across the street, not LC. So this is a totally different zone. You can't compare them. If they were just going to park their fleet and their equipment and, you know, a whole pile, I know they do the Ocean County's equipment and all that and auction it off. That would be one thing, but offering leases to whoever, which you don't know, they might know them, but they don't know what's in the back of the truck. And the fact that they might be coming in after 6 is a real issue for me. Because this kind of truck traffic right next to my house with lights and noise, suppose he wants to sit there and have a sandwich for an hour while his truck idles. There's nobody there to stop him. So I don't think the lease arrangement, I think it should be stricken from the whole application. The next thing I'd like to discuss is the traffic study. I only had a brief while to look at the application over at the building, but I noticed they used Burke Road and Diamond Road. There's like no traffic going north and south. The traffic study needs to be redone and measure north and south from 571 and 527, because that's where you get all your north and south traffic, and there's going to be a huge, with the warehouse, when that's finished, there's going to be a huge mess anyway when you get to 571, because there's a light there, and they're probably going to want to turn right to go to 195. Same goes with 527, they're going to want to turn left. So this added to that is going to cause a big problem. And I'm not sure why they put the driveway right across the street from the other driveway. Is that for convenience? Or is that so that trucks from the warehouse can come over and leave their truck at A&A? Does anybody know?
That's not proposed. It's lined up just for safety, so you don't have, you have vehicles entering and exiting across from each other. Always want to align intersections for safety, as John testified.
To me,
This
that-
site is in no way connected with the warehouse.
Well, to me,
There's
that's
no-
not safe.
None of their traffic will be coming onto this site, or vice
Okay, because
versa.
you've got trucks trying to come out, and they didn't put in a jog handle for the warehouse, which they should have, to turn left. So you're going to have people crossing a lane of traffic from the warehouse. And then you're going to have people exiting this place, going whichever way. I mean, I can just see a mess happening there. So that needs to be considered. I would have put, had I been designing this, having worked at many warehouse buildings, I would have put the driveway at least 100 feet to the east and asked them to turn right to go to 527 and then up. That way they don't, crash into the other trucks if they decide to turn left. Anyway, that's that. So as far as landscaping, I would hope that they would not use white pines like they did across the street, because I moved here almost 30 years ago to retire and planted a few white pines, and what happens is after 5 years, there's nothing at the bottom and it's at the top, so it's really not a good buffer. I would recommend something that stays green from the bottom up, like thugas or something like that. And they also grow taller and faster. I would also like to know why they're using well water as opposed to tapping into city, because didn't the warehouse across the street tap into city water?
We are using city water.
Okay, because the application says well.
Well, I think the well, any reference to well is simply for landscape irrigation. We're not allowed to use public water for landscape irrigation.
Okay.
So there will
Understood.
be a private well, but that's limited to irrigation.
Okay, because many of the aquifers are very stressed in the area, as you can tell by driving around the neighborhood. You can see all the well signs out. Everybody's wells are going dry. So it's an issue, but if you're only using it for irrigation, that would help. But again, I would request sidewalks. I would request all lights be pointed east for the sake of, and as far as lemming too, I mean, that guy that lives back there, he's not going to want, these trucks are going to be coming right in with their headlights pointing right at his house. So I would think he would want at least a 9-foot solid wall back there, at least for the house, like mine. I don't think a chain link with slats is going to cut it. And again, I do have a huge problem with leasing to who knows who, because in the middle of the night, trucks are going to come in, trucks are going to go out, who knows? Okay, they have a key lock. That doesn't mean anything. It's still going to wake me up whether they unlock the gate or not. So I have an issue with that. I think it should be stricken. I don't know what the highest building is. Did anybody say?
Say that again?
Just the trailer?
Yes.
Okay. Did anybody do an environmental impact study?
Environmental impact study was not done, not required. EIS is required in town when you propose more than 20,000 square feet of building.
So all this equipment containing oil and all these trucks containing gas and oil and all these parts and contracting equipment that contain who knows what are sitting on non-paved.
Well, we're using compacted asphalt milling, so we believe it is considered impermeable, and that's where the drainage system factors in with the water quality design. It's no different than any other parking lot. These vehicles travel the road every day, so there's nothing different about this site than any other site where they're driving or parking or anything else.
All right, well, I would have been okay with just storage of equipment and even the containers, but the lease thing is an issue. And lastly, throughout the application, I see everywhere, will not injure or detract neighbors from the neighbor's property, will not detract from the character of the neighborhood. Is it suitable use? Is it in the best interest of the neighborhood? Is it safe flow of highway traffic? There's a lot of questions that I have to say no to. And having studied the warehouse deal across the street, this is minor compared to them, but it's going to add to the mess. So I would like to say, please redo the traffic study using the north and south roads that have traffic as opposed to Burke and Diamond. And okay. Lastly, as a mostly residential, tax-paying community up and down this little 3-mile section of West Commodore, which is a county road. I feel that there is undue prejudice and bias against our community along this stretch. The Jewish community, of which I am one, has felt this bias and has had to sue the township many times for millions of dollars to get their request. Our community, which is a tax-paying community along West Commodore Boulevard, is being forcibly destroyed, and our homes will have losing their value by detracting from the character, the old character of the neighborhood. These projects, with regard to the 2009 master plan, which all of the homes were built way before the 2009 master plan, it does not contribute to the well-being of the persons, the neighborhood, the communities, and the environment. In my opinion, if these projects continue, the residents should have their property taxes substantially lowered. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
I have a question for you.
Yeah, speak up, please, because I can hardly hear.
You brought up bias. In what way is?
Against the residents?
In what ways is
Pay
biased?
taxes along that 3-mile stretch. That's
Understood, but this is a commercial zone, so in what way does this impact bias whatsoever?
because we can't get out of our driveways and we can't sleep. That's bias.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming forward. Before I ask if there's anyone else, Mr. Borden, Mr. Pfeffer, maybe I missed it, and I was checking my notes. I just want to clarify, you mentioned that the property is located on the south side of West Commodore between Burke and Diamond. It doesn't say that that's where his traffic study was done, or did I miss that?
That's correct. John could clarify if you need to, but
I don't
his
see
study
him. That's why I
included
asked
the
you.
entire roadway, so.
Okay. Ma'am, so I didn't want to say this without questioning you
I
first.
understand.
Mr. Ray did just come back in, he wasn't there, that's why I asked you. The study was not done at Diamond and Burke. What it reads is that the property is located on the south side of West Commodore Boulevard, which is County Route 526, between Burke and Diamond, as shown on Figure 1 on their site location. It doesn't say that's where they did the traffic study. The traffic study was done along that whole stretch. Hence, Mr. Hosteen, Mr. Hurley, and everyone's questions regarding why they took the Glory development into consideration. It's that whole stretch of area that was considered. You mentioned several times it was just Diamond and Burke. That's not accurate. I just wanted to
Okay.
be sure for the record.
Well, I read it, when I read it, it looked like they were saying enter and exit from
No, well, that's why I
Burke
wanted to
and
make sure we
Diamond.
got that on the record. It's not that it was done
I
at
will
Diamond
read it
and Burke.
again, thank you.
All right. Thank you again for coming forward. Anyone else wishing to come forward and make any comments regarding this application?
Chair?
Yes, Mr. Hyman.
I just want to get some clarification on the trailer, the office trailer. Could you explain to me what this office trailer, the use is for exactly, and how does it fit in with the local ordinances? The
I'm
office
sorry.
trailer.
All right, let me interrupt for 1 second. Do we want to address that when you come back?
Either
Or-
way, the trailer is just in case they need somebody on site. Again, there's no intent to have someone on site full-time, but in case they do have to come in for some operations, I believe it's maxed at 400 square feet. It would be for the operator, it's not for rental, that's for the owner to come, if they have to come to the site and do any work that's there. But
And
it's
the
not-
use of a trailer in general in Jackson, is that a permitted use?
Office trailer?
Yes.
It's basically just a small office building. That's all it is.
But I just know, I remember hearing something about, they don't allow trailers to be used for different things in Jackson. Many years ago, there was some kind of ordinance about that.
It's basically, probably the use of the word trailer related to office is inappropriate, and that would be my fault. It's really a modular office that's placed on the site.
Okay.
It's no different than an office building. It's just very small. You typically see them on construction sites with project managers. You know, in those cases, it's temporary. In this case, it would be permanent.
Correct, that's what I was trying to verify.
Basically,
If there's an ordinance that allows this as a long-term thing, I know that you have
Yes,
them on.
this would be an office building with a single office and a bathroom. That's all.
Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to come forward and make comments regarding this application? Seeing no one else come forward, I'm going to close public session. Mr. Pfeffer, before we close, I believe that Ms. Fritsch has a question.
I did, I had a question. How will we ensure that nobody who's leasing would be able to park their vehicle and like sleep in it overnight? How would we monitor that?
So a couple of things. One, I believe, and I think we agreed to this on the previous application, in the individual lease agreements, it's not allowed. So that would be a violation of the person who's leasing the space. The operator doesn't allow it. So again, when we say monitor it, it's not allowed. So they'd be in violation.
So are they going to have to swipe to get in? Like, are they going to know who's there and at what times?
Yes.
Okay.
Every time somebody enters or exits through the key card, that'll be registered to their office every time.
Okay, so if somebody then ends up reporting it, they
If
would
they
know?
see somebody come in and not come out,
Okay,
and they're going to be on the site every day anyway, so.
thank you.
Very important is that, again, there's a track history with this operator, with these sites. So at this point, they're very seasoned, they know exactly what to look out for and what to do. And each time we've come before the board, we've built on it and made it better.
And one other question. What about this concern with the driveways right across the street? I mean, I don't know, that doesn't seem, like, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't want my neighbor's driveway right behind mine either, so.
We might want John Ray to come up and testify to that, but the preferred design is to line them up. What you don't want is an offset. You either want them lined up or offset by a large distance. To say, move it 100 feet and just offset it, that would lead to a dangerous weave condition at the two driveways. So the traffic design standards are to do it.
Yeah, I just to elaborate on what Ian said, he's correct, that the proper engineering protocol is to line the two driveways up center line to center line. That will give us the ability to do widening on West Commodore and to provide left turn lanes that would be a mirror image of one another. One left turn lane would be for the warehouse project on the north side. The other left turn lane would be for traffic entering our site. It's the proper engineering solution when you have sites across the street from one another, to line the driveways up and to organize the intersection properly.
Okay.
That's correct.
Do you think that there should be like a right only, or should they be able to make a left out of?
The traffic analysis shows that they should be able to make a left out of the driveway. The only thing, everybody, I don't want to spend too much of the board's time. A lot of times, left turn restrictions are placed on driveways without giving any thought to where people will make a U-turn to get back to that direction. And sometimes the consequences are worse than restricting the left turn. This might be one, unless it's a divided highway where you have jug handles and traffic signals, like the other section of County Line Road where you have jug handles, then it's a great thing to have right in, right out, because you can use the traffic signals and the jug handles to reverse direction. In this case, if you restricted the left turn out, I guess they'd probably go down to Glory's or go into our neighbors, the warehouse that's next to us, and just do a U-turn and make the left turn anyway. And we don't want them to do that. But I understand your concern.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Hudak?
Signage prominently displayed no idling, as per New Jersey regulations.
Oh, we can add that, yeah. We can add that, yes. We'll also, I took notes about the neighbors' comments, and we'll address those too. And made some good comments about a solid fence on her property and the lighting, and we'll address all of those when we come back.
Sidewalks?
The landscaping, make sure we have the right height, the right species.
Jeff, do we have dates? I only have a copy of the May 15th, and
How about what?
the meetings can't, I'm not going to be here. So the meeting, we only had 2 on, so it was cleared anyway.
I think we're talking August.
Yeah, I don't
I'm
have.
sorry?
I think we're talking August.
I don't have June or July agendas, so
Yeah,
I'm
we
thinking
didn't-
August.
Yeah, August 7th? Is that acceptable?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Application number 3 on tonight's agenda, which was heard as number 5, A&A Truck Parts, Inc., preliminary and final site plan, 910 with use variance, 3494, block 2508, lots 6 and 7. This application is being carried to the August 7th, 2024 meeting of the Jackson Township Zoning Board of Adjustment. No further notice will be required, and the applicant waives time.
Yes,
Thank you very much.
thank you.
Thank you. Motion to adjourn? All in favor?
Aye.